My sister chooses our grandfather, instead of our father, to walk her down the aisle at her wedding after years of neglect from both parents. I am 35 years old woman and have 2 siblings. My sister is 29 and my brother is 23. Our parents are extremely religious and conservative. During our childhood, they were very concerned about their social image. They always wanted a son and were extremely disappointed when I was born, and then my sister after me. Being their first daughter, when they found out I was going to be a girl before I was born, they even considered not having me. But because of their religion, they decided to go through with the pregnancy. My grandmother told me that when I was only 2 years old, my mother sent me to stay with her because she was depressed having me around. Growing up with my grandparents was amazing. My grandfather patiently taught me how to ride a bike. I still remember the thrill of pedaling on my own for the first time. Those days of bike riding created a strong bond between us that lasted for a long time. My grandmother taught me everything about gardening. I learned how to take care of plants, watch flowers bloom, and enjoy a little piece of nature. The skills she shared during those gardening days still help me today. Through all of this, my parents never came to visit me until I turned 7, when people started questioning why I wasn't living with them. They took me back from my grandparents to live with them despite my protests. I would have loved to stay with my grandparents because they brought stability and warmth to my life. 3 years later, my parents were excited to find out they were expecting another child. However, when they discovered it was going to be another girl, they were disappointed again. Surprisingly, they were slightly more relaxed about it compared to when I was on the way. Fortunately, my sister didn't have to go through what I did and got to stay with our parents. Growing up, the differences in how my parents treated me and my sister were quite noticeable. For example, I was expected to help my mother a lot with household chores and responsibilities. It felt like I had an endless list of tasks to complete to meet their expectations. However, when it came to my sister, the rules seemed a bit more relaxed. She didn't face the same level of pressure, and my parents were more lenient with her chores. It was as if they had learned from their previous parenting experiences and decided to take a different approach with her. Another example was how they handled our education. When I was in school, there was immense pressure on me to excel in all subjects. My parents had high expectations, and any deviation from top grades was met with disappointment. They enrolled me in various extracurricular activities, pushing me to be the best at everything. In contrast, when my sister started school, the atmosphere was significantly more relaxed. While they still cared about her education, the level of intensity was not the same. They allowed her to explore her interests at her own pace and didn't impose the same strict rules that I experienced. The most striking difference, however, was how they celebrated achievements. When I accomplished something noteworthy, it was often met with a nod of approval or a brief acknowledgement. But when my sister achieved something, the whole family celebrated as if it were a major milestone. These differences created a sense of confusion in me. I couldn't understand why the same parents had such contrasting approaches to raising their children. It wasn't easy growing up in an environment where I constantly felt scrutinized while watching my sister enjoy a more carefree upbringing. However, I made a conscious effort not to hold resentment toward her, as I recognized that my sister wasn't responsible for the parenting decisions our parents made. Despite these challenges, I remained committed to supporting my sister and being a positive influence in her life. In fact, we managed to maintain a good relationship and have always stayed close. 6 years later, everything changed when my brother was born. Our parents threw a massive feast to celebrate the fact that they finally had a son. From the day he was born, it was clear he received special treatment. He had fancy clothes, expensive toys, and a super cool room that was much more luxurious than ours, my sister's and mine. Our parents really went all out for him, buying the best baby items like high-end strollers and an expensive crib. It wasn't just about things. Our little brother also received much more attention. Our parents took tons of photos and videos of him reaching every baby milestone. But when it came to me and my sister, there was never that much fuss. Even in everyday matters, our parents were more involved with him. They never missed a doctor's appointment or a play date. They were always there for him. For my sister and me, our grandparents played a bigger role in our lives. After my brother was born, this unequal treatment didn't stop in childhood. It continued as he grew up, shaping our family dynamics and causing some challenges along the way. My brother was excused from many household chores that my sister and I were expected to handle. Our parents often gave him special treatment, exempting him from responsibilities that were an integral part of our daily routine. Birthdays and special occasions became grand celebrations for him, with elaborate parties and expensive gifts. As you can imagine, this made us feel left out all the time. To be fair, I had already grown used to their treatment by this point, but this was the first time my sister was experiencing what I had gone through as a child. We started spending a lot of time and vacations at our grandparents' house. As we spent countless afternoons playing in their backyard or sitting by the fireplace listening to their stories, our grandparents became our confidants. We shared all our fears, dreams, and the challenges we faced at home. My grandmother always reassured us that we weren't alone. When I was a teenager, my parents labeled me a rebellious daughter because I had different political beliefs from my family. Whenever I tried to explain my views, my mom would cry and say that I was stressing her out. If I ever expressed sadness or anger around her, my mom would get upset and tell me she couldn't stand being near me when I was like that. Then she would ignore me for hours. As my sister grew older, she started developing her own identity and also faced some mental health issues. For years, my mom refused to get her treatment because, according to her, she really didn't need it. However, when my sister had panic or anxiety attacks, my mom would tell her she was a burden. There was one night when things got really bad at home. Our parents kept repeating how disappointing my sister and I were and how we should never have been born. We felt like we were drowning in their harsh words and couldn't take it anymore. Feeling lost and hurt, my sister and I decided to leave home. We packed our things and headed straight to our grandparents' house. When our parents found out we were there, they showed up, demanding that we return home. My grandmother reproached them for treating us this way, and my dad responded that he provided us with food and a roof over our heads. So, what more could we want from him? Upon hearing this, my grandfather, who is usually very calm and composed, became very angry and raised his voice for the first time. He yelled at my father, telling him that he should be ashamed of treating his own children this way, and threatened to call Child Protective Services if he ever did anything to hurt us. This really scared my parents since my brother was still young, and they feared losing custody of him too. My grandfather continued defending us, insisting that we deserved better parents than them. I clearly remember him telling my mother that she was his daughter, but he had never treated her that way, so how could she be so cruel to me and my sister? My mother's face turned red with shame. That fight at our grandparents' house became a turning point, as it was the first time someone stood up for us, and it made all the difference. After that night at our grandparents' house, things changed a little at home. Our parents, especially my dad, were a bit scared after my grandfather's threat, so things softened somewhat. Our brother continued receiving a lot of love, but the constant yelling and punishment for us lessened a little. When I turned 18, I really wanted to go to college, but my parents were completely against it. So, we had a massive fight. My mom said that, as a woman, I should focus on getting married and having children. She claimed that men wouldn't be interested in a woman with too much education. My dad joined in, mocking what I would even do with more education. It was pure chaos hearing my own parents discourage me from being independent just because of my gender. Despite their protests, I went straight to a 4-year university. I had a scholarship because I was selected for its honors program, meaning my parents didn't have to pay anything for me. My parents were furious with me for disobeying them, but I didn't care. I started working part-time during college and saving money. During this time, living alone at university was a game changer, teaching me the ropes of adulthood and giving me a glimpse of the real world. Balancing studies, a part-time job, and my personal life wasn't always easy, but it definitely made me stronger and more independent. Throughout all of this, my parents rarely called to check on me. Eventually, I graduated and got a full-time job. I had saved enough from my part-time job to move into an apartment with roommates. My conversations with my parents became less and less frequent, almost non-existent. It wasn't just me pulling away. They seemed content with the distance too. Occasional birthdays and holidays passed with little more than a generic greeting. There were moments when life hit me hard, work struggles, relationship issues, and my instinct was to turn to family. But each time, I hesitated because I knew they wouldn't care. The thought of getting back on that emotional roller coaster with my parents was overwhelming. Soon, it became a conscious choice to keep them out of my life entirely. The only person in my family with whom I maintained constant contact was my sister. When it was her turn to go to college, our parents threatened to kick her out if she pursued higher education while living under their roof. So, I offered to take her in. I had to make sure she had the chance to follow her dreams without our parents holding her back. My sister moved in with me and started attending a local community college. I worked tirelessly to support both of us. It wasn't always easy, but I was determined to support her education and help her achieve her goals. During this time, our bond grew even stronger, and I found comfort in knowing that, despite the hardships with our parents, I could create an environment of support and encouragement for my sister to thrive. When our brother grew up, he didn't face the same difficulties my sister and I did. Our parents were proud to send him to college, and had even saved enough to set up a college fund for him, ensuring he had the financial support he needed for higher education. Our brother clearly had opportunities and privileges that we never had, and I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions, happiness for him, and a tinge of sadness at the stark contrast in how we were treated. Nevertheless, my sister and I continued to support each other, determined to overcome the challenges we faced growing up. Through all the highs and lows, our grandparents remained a constant source of support for my sister and me. Over the years, they kept in touch with us, visiting whenever they could. A few years ago, our beloved grandmother passed away, and my sister and I rushed home to be there for our grandfather. That gathering marked the first time I had seen our parents in a long time. They acknowledged my presence with a simple nod. Seeing their lack of warmth made me want to burst into tears, as I was already feeling vulnerable at that moment. But I didn't want my mother scolding me for making a scene. I remember that after our grandmother's passing, my sister and I spent more time with our grandfather. Despite our busy schedules, we made a conscious effort to be there for him. We visited him regularly, shared meals together, or simply sat on the porch, immersed in conversations that ranged from childhood stories to recent events. On weekends, we dedicated entire afternoons to helping him with household chores or accompanying him to the local park. During one of our shared meals, my grandfather expressed his pride in me for taking care of my younger sister. His words took me by surprise, and I was genuinely moved by his recognition. He went on to say that having a granddaughter like me made him proud, and that he believed I had the potential to change the world someday. Even though I understood they were just words, an overwhelming wave of emotions hit me, and tears welled up in my eyes. It had been a long time since someone had sincerely appreciated me. With a gentle tap on my head, my grandfather assured me that my sister was lucky to have an older sister like me. The pride shining in his eyes is an image forever etched in my memory. Our brother, who has been the recipient of our parents' preferential treatment, has always kept his distance, perhaps fearing that our parents would exclude him as they did with us over the years. My sister and I occasionally spoke with him, or heard through relatives or cousins about the numerous things our parents had done for him while ignoring our existence, such as spending money on multiple used cars for our brother over the years. They paid the down payment on a house so that our brother could move out and live on his own. Last year, they paid for our brother and his girlfriend to go to New York City so he could relax, as, according to our parents, he was working too hard. Recently, my sister, who had been dating her college sweetheart, Robert, a 29-year-old, got engaged. The news filled me with immense joy, and I couldn't be happier for her. She and Robert make a wonderful couple, and the love they share is evident in every smile and glance they exchange. The proposal was nothing short of magical, and my sister was on cloud 9, showing off the beautiful ring adorning her finger to anyone who could spare a moment to share in her happiness. She posted photos of her proposal on social media, which is how our relatives found out and called to congratulate her. Eventually, the news must have reached our parents. Our phones started ringing non-stop with calls and text messages from our parents. Honestly, it was surprising because, until now, they hadn't shown much interest in what was happening in our lives. It made us wonder why they were suddenly so eager to be part of our happiness when they had kept their distance for so long. The messages brought a mix of emotions, surprise, confusion, and maybe a bit of annoyance. Why now? Why did they decide to step in just as we were experiencing a happy moment? Taken aback by this unexpected attention, my sister and I exchanged puzzled looks. When my sister finally answered our mom's call, Mom expressed how excited she was to hear about the engagement. My sister, being polite, thanked her. Then came the tricky part. Mom started asking all kinds of questions. She wanted to know who this Robert was and if they could meet him. Now, knowing our parents and their history, my sister tried to dodge the topic, mentioning her hectic work schedule amid the chaos of wedding planning. But Dad, probably sitting there with Mom, chimed in. He insisted that they deserved to meet the man she planned to spend the rest of her life with. Their persuasive tactics were strong, and my sister eventually gave in. My sister didn't want to face our parents alone, so she told them she would bring me along for the meeting, and surprisingly, our parents agreed. It was a bit unexpected, but we decided to go through with it. The day of the meeting arrived, and we nervously made our way to our parents' house to meet them. The atmosphere was tense from the start. Our parents greeted us with forced smiles, trying to act as if everything was normal. Mom smiled more warmly at Robert, and we all sat down to talk. It was uncomfortable seeing our parents after so long, especially as they tried to act like a happy family in front of Robert. Although I'm sure Robert knew the whole story, given that he had dated my sister throughout college and had been with her for so long. The tension in the air was palpable, and Robert, sensing the discomfort, tried to keep the conversation light. He shared a bit about himself, his job, and his interests, hoping to ease the awkwardness. Our conversation then shifted toward my sister and Robert's upcoming wedding. That's when things got interesting. Our parents started subtly hinting at how wonderful it would be if Dad walked my sister down the aisle, and if Mom played an integral part in the ceremony as well. My sister and I looked at them in confusion. Dad went on to say how he wanted us to present a united front in front of our relatives to avoid any family embarrassment, and Mom nodded in agreement. She reiterated that they didn't want Robert's family to think my sister didn't have parents of her own, so they wanted to be involved. Hearing their words, my sister and I exchanged glances. Now it was clear that they had called us here for their own agenda. They were afraid my sister wouldn't invite them to the wedding, and they didn't want their relatives to question them. It would hurt their social status. I shook my head in disbelief, understanding their motives. My sister elegantly thanked them for their suggestions, but calmly stated that she had already made a decision about who would walk her down the aisle. My dad curiously asked who else she could have chosen for such an important role in her wedding. With a confident smile, my sister dropped the bomb. Grandpa would be walking her down the aisle. Our parents looked stunned, struggling to hide their shock. Their expressions quickly shifted from anticipation to anger. They couldn't comprehend that their daughter had chosen our grandfather over them for such a significant role. That's pretty much how the conversation continued after that. Mom, but sweetheart, it's tradition for a father to walk his daughter down the aisle. You can't break tradition. Sister, well, Mom, I don't care about breaking traditions. I want Grandpa to be part of this special moment. He was there for us when you both forgot you had daughters. You can only attend the wedding as guests, like any other relatives. Dad, you can't just shut us out like this. We're your parents. Hearing this, I couldn't hold in my laughter anymore, and I started laughing out loud. Everyone was pretty shocked by my reaction. I looked my dad straight in the eyes and told him that he and Mom had forgotten how to be parents to us, treating us like garbage all those years, so they had no right to demand my sister listen to them now. The truth hit hard, and our parents, angry and embarrassed, started yelling at my sister and me. They insisted that we were going to ruin their reputation, but honestly, we didn't care. My sister stood her ground, telling them they couldn't suddenly claim a parental role when they had neglected us for so long. I joined in, expressing how their actions had consequences and that they couldn't rewrite the past. She made it clear that our parents would have a limited role in the wedding, just like any other guest. They were welcome to attend, but their participation would be minimal. The meeting ended on a bitter and tense note, with my sister standing firm in her decision. As we left, I couldn't help but feel a mix of admiration for my sister's courage and disappointment at our parents' inability to understand the consequences of their past actions. Since the meeting, we have been harassed by our parents and other relatives, accusing us of being selfish and cruel for not allowing our father to walk my sister down the aisle. I have been criticized for telling our parents the truth, and for supporting my sister's decision to have our grandfather walk her down the aisle instead. Update 1. It has been a few hours since I posted the story, and the support has been overwhelming. For everyone asking about our grandfather, my sister has informed him about the engagement, and he enthusiastically congratulated her. However, he still doesn't know about my sister's idea to ask him to walk her down the aisle. We want to be there when we give him the news to see his reaction. We plan to visit him this upcoming weekend. As for our parents, they have continued to send us multiple angry messages. Dad even found a way to contact Robert on Facebook, where he sent him a long message saying that, as the man in the relationship, he should make my sister see reason. He went on to write that my sister had no right to ask her grandfather, as it is traditionally the father's role. Then, he threatened Robert, saying that if he allowed my sister to go through with this, then he and Mom would not attend the wedding. Robert simply responded, "My fiancée is going to do whatever she wants and I support her. It's your choice whether or not to attend our wedding." The clarity and firmness of Robert's response probably sent shockwaves through my father, who likely expected a more submissive reaction. I can't help but imagine the expression on his face, and it makes me laugh. I will update after we meet with our grandfather this weekend. Update 2. My sister and I traveled to our grandfather's house this weekend, overflowing with excitement to share the news with him. Finally, my sister told him she had something important to tell him. He looked at us, his eyes full of curiosity and warmth. My sister took a deep breath and said, "I want you to walk me down the aisle on my big day. You have always been there for us, and I can't imagine anyone else doing it." Our grandfather's eyes filled with tears, and he hugged my sister tightly. His voice broke with emotion as he expressed how honored he felt that my sister had asked him. Seeing my grandfather with tears in his eyes, I couldn't hold back my own, and we shared a group hug. Our grandfather kept thanking my sister, saying how much it meant to him. We assured him that it was the least we could do to repay the love and support he had given us over the years. Then, we explained how we had told our parents the news and the way they had reacted. We were worried they might take out their anger on him, but our grandfather laughed. He assured us that he could handle our mom and that nothing would stop him from walking my sister down the aisle. My sister sighed in relief, and we spent the afternoon helping our grandfather around the house. As my sister's wedding day approaches, we are fully immersed in the planning, from choosing the perfect theme that reflects her personality to finalizing her wedding dress and meticulously organizing the seating arrangements. For the guests, I can't wait to see my beautiful sister say "I do" to the love of her life very soon. Update 3. It has been 3 months since my last update, and I apologize for the delay. I've been quite busy with my life. The wedding day arrived, and it turned out to be everything my sister had dreamed of, and more. The venue looked stunning, and as we had anticipated, the guests filled the seats, creating an atmosphere of joy and excitement all around us. However, there was one notable absence: our parents. Given our decision to limit their role in the wedding, they chose not to attend, a decision we respected. It was a bittersweet moment to realize they were missing from such a significant event in my sister's life. The ceremony itself was magical. My sister, radiant in her wedding dress, stood beside our grandfather. The love and pride in his eyes were palpable as they walked down the aisle together. Choosing to have Grandpa in this crucial role was the right decision, and the joy it brought my sister was evident. The atmosphere was filled with warmth, laughter, and the shared happiness of everyone present. My sister and Robert exchanged vows, promising a life of love and companionship. The celebration continued into the night with dancing, laughter, and heartfelt toasts. Life has moved forward for us since the wedding. My sister and I have made the conscious decision to block our parents so they can no longer reach out with their negativity and drama. We still visit our grandfather regularly whenever we can. The journey has not been easy, but as we move forward, our focus remains on building a life filled with positivity and surrounded by those who truly care. Hopefully, this will be my last update.